Well, thank you very much, Ken. So Kivumbi 2022 begins right here, right now with these conversations. And as you've heard from Ken and Akisa, these conversations will go on until later tonight. Let's begin the conversation with Dr. Willy Mutunga, former Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya, the man who has played a key role in the civil society and the development of the civil society space in this country. He is one of the co-founders of the Kenya Human Rights Commission. He's also participated in very many conversations about, electoral processes and justice and social justice in the country. And by the time he was rising to the position of Chief Justice of the Republic, almost everybody knew about Dr. Willy Mutunga. Welcome to Kivumbi 2022.
Yeah, thank you very much.
It's good to have you on the show. Daktari, you have, like I've said, done quite a lot of work in the civil society space, from your days in the university, from your days by the time you were deciding, let's form Kenya Human Rights Commission. It's because you felt that there was a need for the alternative voice, a third voice, to come and challenge the government and be the voice of the citizens. Do you feel that the civil society then, let's say the 70s and the 80s, into the 90s, and the current civil society are still as vibrant?
Well, I think it's very, very good that the definition was given about who civil society is. But there were some organizations that were missed, like the international government organizations that are here. Community-based organization, I think those were particularly captured. I think unions, I think they were captured. Think tanks. I think also the religious and secular.
Yeah.
Because those are civil societies. Now, if you go back to the 70s, it's the site for civil society action was the University of Nairobi, because there was one university. So there was a union of students and staff, and that site also attracted the parliamentarians, the guys who are called the seven bearded sisters.
Yes.
Although the sister was the eighth one, Chelagat Mutai. So the Kawigi and others used to come to the university as a site where they could, talk about their projects and so forth. And at that point, the other sites of civil society struggle were closed. Maendeleo Wanawake was the Department of KANU. Trade union, also KOTU was, part of KANU. And in the 70s, really, it's the university that was the site. And by 1982, you know what happened. The staff union was banned. The student unions were banned after the attempted coup. And from then on, you had a dictatorship that wasn't checked. Until the Mwakenya happened, because civil society became very militant, went underground, and that's the period you have Mwakenya. And those are the periods of very, very brutal dictatorship. That when Section 2A is repealed, and then you have what is now called the second liberation, you get then a vibrancy of civil society and political parties working now towards constitution making, change of the laws that were repressive, and organizations like Law Society of Kenya, which is a civil society organization, started doing fantastic work in 1988. During the Mulolongo, Justice GBM Kariuki, who was then president, opposed the cube voting, Mulolongo.
Yep.
And earlier on, he had also opposed the repealing of the security reserves tenure for judges and the Attorney General. Then Muita came in, in 1991. and was joined Jaramogi and others. And I came after Muite, and we also continued this struggle, which was basically civil society and opposition.
So there was support for the civil society at this point from people who are playing in the opposition politics space.
Yes, because they were also excluded.
Basically, you're pushing the same thing.
Yes.
You're pushing for reforms, for electoral reforms.
Yeah.
You're pushing for changes to happen.
Yeah.
And as we continue the conversation, let me just explain, because some people may be watching and saying, why is the former Chief Justice still wearing a mask? The former Chief Justice wants to retain his mask as part of his responsibility in the fight against COVID-19. And we understand that and completely agree with you.
And they just listen to my voice, not my face.
Indeed.
Be interested.
You can be heard clearly.
Yeah.
As you've explained, we had a civil society that had to go underground because of the conditions and the situation then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then we had now this vibrancy that comes in at from the 88 going into 89, 90 and pushing for multipartyism. And now the civil society was vibrant. There was also now, and you can tell us this, the support that the local civil society organizations were receiving from international actors, such as we know the former U.S. Ambassador Smith Hempston and the others.
Yeah.
What role did they play?
Well, that's a great question. 1989, the Soviet Union collapses, okay? And the Americans and the Brits and everybody else turn against one-party dictatorships, okay? And they started supporting, movements that were geared to resisting one-party dictatorship. And these are the same forces that supported the dictatorship from the 70s or 80s. But that's the nature of foreign interests, double standards.
They shift according to their own interests.
Yeah, their interests, that's right. They shift, and they realize that there was no specter of communism, and that they could now, it was in their interest to have multi-party democracy. And so those forces are important, even today, in determining the spaces, of civil society groups and how they shrink and how they expand. So basically what happens during that period, the Nordic countries particularly opened their doors to groups like Kenya Human Rights Commission, Kituo cha Sheria, FIDA and others. And there was funding for a lot of work basically dealing with the political and civil rights, which the opposition groups wanted, the freedom of movement, the freedom of expression, and also assembly. So that's what we focused on, during that period.
And you were getting the support, and the support was coming in financially.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
There's a lot of technical support that you were getting from these countries and the organizations.
Yes.
Now, we saw a very vibrant civil society in the 90s. At that point, from the first transition, let's say, let's call the transition from Section 2A, repealing Section 2A, first transition there, getting into a multi-party era, and the next decade of multi-partyism, the 97 elections as well, with the bringing in of IPPG, trying to open up and have transparent elections. The IPPG conversation was led a lot by the opposition parties in Parliament and the civil society outside. Now, the issue then comes with 2002, where it has been said that many of those who were playing in the opposition and in the civil society then joined politics and got into office. And there was a sort of a feeling of a rebirth of a country when in 2002, now we have a new regime, Kanu is out, we have the former players in the trenches now occupying the space, and that's when the citizens' sort of disillusion with the civil society begins. Do you feel that it's a justified observation by those that say, at that point, that the civil society got into the room, they occupied the space, and they basically just did not want to support those who were left outside?
Well, let me say that the NCC was opposed to IPPG because IPPG was interested in what were called minimal reforms, basically trying to level the playing field before the 1997 elections. The civil society groups wanted comprehensive reforms, okay, and a new constitution. So IPPG was a very astute political strategy on the part of President Moi, you know. He managed to tell these guys, why are you working with people who are not elected? You know, what is it that you want? And they said, oh, we want electoral election.
We want electoral reforms, we want to participate.
We want this. And
selecting the referee.
Yes, and they gave them what were called minimal reforms. And he accepted them. And they got representatives in the Electoral Commission of Kenya. So they got, you know, they were able to leave, you know, one of the conventions of NCA and trooped to Parliament. And it happened overnight.
So was this sort of a betrayal then? That people who were working together, the opposition members of Parliament and the very strong and vibrant civil society, does the civil society feel that the opposition politicians have let them down by accepting this very minimal changes? Yeah,
although it didn't surprise a lot of us who knew that this was just a marriage of convenience. It wasn't an organic connection between social movements and political parties. You know, that bridge wasn't built. So they actually were convinced that they needed those reforms to compete in the 1997 elections. And at that point, I still think that it was a turning point for civil society, particularly since Kibwana was our spokesperson and he had a lot of support. Some of us did push for an autonomous movement and even a political party that will consolidate the gains that the civil society had made. But because, again, the donors expect the civil society to be non-partisan, okay? There was that pressure, you know, and I remember the donors basically telling us, oh, you have done a lot, you know, you brought reforms, therefore you should do this non-partisan work and so forth. And so there was pressure from the donors, pressure from the politicians, but that is the reality of our politics. Our politics is controlled by forces you don't see. We elect people who don't run the country. You know, behind leaders you have cartels, you have foreign interests from the east and west. So I think there were, for us, you know, there was a bit of naivety, but looking at the IPPG, we then decided to go and basically now fight for comprehensive reforms. And in 1998, January, we started that movement
towards having more comprehensive constitutional
yes, which ended up, of course, with the 2010 constitution.
We will continue this conversation shortly. Let's take a break at this point. We're having the conversation with Dr. Willy Mutunga, former Chief Justice and a veteran of the civil society movement in the country. The role of civil society, especially in Kenya's elections. Now that we are discussing Kivumbi 2022, we're talking about elections. What role does the civil society play? Is it playing the same role that it was playing, like what Dr. Mutunga is telling us, in 92, in 97, in 2002? Keep it right here. We'll be back shortly.